Good morning, people, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Thursday, the 30th of May. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Going good. Derek, good to be with you as ever.
Yeah, most definitely. And there's plenty to talk about. It was a busy day with regards to Rangers yesterday. Plenty to get stuck into. Before we do that, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors. You can see the banner above both mine and Joshua's heads, MPH Boilers, and they're opening up a brand new showroom in Dunfermline. And to coincide with that, they've got a wonderful opening day weekend coming up between June 14th to 16th. It's a Vegas themed weekend. So there'll be roulette games where you can win prizes off services and what have you. And there's also a grand prize if you land on zero. You can win an all expenses paid trip over to Vegas itself. You can stay in Trump Tower. The all-important link is in the description below. If that is something you're looking to head over to between June and 14th and 16th, then do click the link. Right, where shall we start? Big news yesterday was obviously we start with transfers, Joshua. You broke the news that Sam Lammers will be departing Rangers this summer. He has spent the second half of his year at Rangers on loan at FC Utrecht in his homeland, and he's enjoyed quite the time there, scoring 11 goals and breaking a 40-year-old record on his way by scoring in 7 successive league matches in the Eredivisie. Quite incredible stuff. He was also crowned Eredivisie Player of the Month in April, and he will be moving on. It looks like the Netherlands will be his likely destination. But yes, Sam Lammers departing, Joshua. Don't think it's come as a big surprise. Just didn't quite work out for him.
No, and we can maybe spend a bit of time talking about why, Derek, because rarely has there been a season as contrasting, an individual season as contrasting as there has been for Sam Lammers this season, who, up until December, January, much like Cyril Dessers, had a really difficult start to life at Rangers, missed some glaring opportunities, and had only scored 2 goals by the time he went to Utrecht in January. He, pushed time on a few months, and he had, as you say, broken that record by scoring in 7 successive Eredivisie games, ended the season with 11 goals, nearly got his team into Europe, which would have been quite the achievement. And it shows the complexities of recruitment in football and players getting the right environment. I think everyone could see back in pre-season that Lammers was a player who had real technical ability. I think you could also see that, as everyone who is watching knows, and everyone who's been at Ibrox knows, playing for Rangers comes with a lot of pressure, especially when you don't start well, and players who are better than Lammers haven't been able to recover from that. There was some noise about whether, and I know Alan Coy spoke about this, didn't he, on the radio, should Rangers just bring him back and play him as a number 9, because obviously he never really played in that position at Ibrox. Derek, we can maybe get into some of the background as to why that was the case. But as we said yesterday, he will leave the club this summer. That is the intention. Rangers confident they can recoup the fee, and if not possible, hopefully they can possibly get more than the money that they paid for Lammers, which is not what the situation looked like in January. It looked like they were going to have to offload him for a cut price fee. A lot of significant interest from him in Holland, as would be expected, given the number of goals that he has scored. And obviously the news that Chris had earlier in the day, not only about Robbie Fraser and the likelihood that he's going to sign a new deal at Rangers, but also the fact that Josie Cordoba, who looked very close to a deal at certain points, was a guest for Rangers' home game against Kilmarnock, will no longer be going travelling to Ibrox this summer from Bulgaria. So a busy day yesterday, and lots of interesting points to get into.
Yeah, you've got a shot map of Lammers, don't you? Can you
I do. Get ready.
Let's go. Let's determine why it never quite worked for him.
Well, I'll read this out first, Derek, because this is we've got a piece on the website today that goes into a little bit more context as to some of the reasons why, speaking to people who know the situation, Lammers could have the start to the season where, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, remember the Celtic miss, remember the Servette miss at home. There was a chance away at Aberdeen, which wasn't a glaring miss, but it could have been a big goal if Rangers had scored then. And a number of other moments where Lammers just looked like a player who couldn't score to then go on and score the number of goals he did was really impressive. This is, we had a piece last August, and it's going to be included in the piece that goes out today, with one of Lammers' former teammates, and he was speaking about the role that Michael Beale had identified Lammers to come in and play, which was kind of a 9.5 role. And you see it a lot around football. Jude Bellingham plays this at Real Madrid, where he's not quite a striker, he's not quite a midfielder. Kai Havertz is the same, and the idea being that you have a physical player who can give you a bit of an outball, who can be an extra striker in the box, but also has the technical ability to give you an extra body in midfield. And Lammers' ex-teammate said this of him. He said, Sam can score from nothing because he's such a good footballer. The issue has been that most coaches don't use him like a real number 9. They use him like a 9.5 to play between or overload spaces because he's such a good footballer. Sam can do that, but if you use him as a real number 9, he will score at least 15 goals over the course of a season and give you 10 assists. And that's proved a pretty accurate prediction for Lammers' season compared to how he was playing at Rangers and the goals he scored at FC Utrecht. He'd underperformed his expected goals by 4, Derek. He'd scored 2 goals from about 6 expected goals over the 6 months he spent at Rangers. And if I bring this up from his time at FC Utrecht, this is before the playoffs, so it doesn't include his 11th goal, but he scored 10 goals from 8.5, I think that's 8.58 expected goals. So an overperformance, a range of different goals. Again, it'll be included in the feature piece today that goes into a little bit more detail about his time in Holland. There's clearly a very good player in there, but again, I think what this demonstrates is that football is not that simple. Transfers aren't that simple. Getting the right environment for a player can take a lot of work. And the first half of the season probably showed that while Lammers can go and play in what is a better league in the Eredivisie and score a lot of goals, Rangers need to move on. Rangers need to reinvest money. Rangers need to get more players in, and this is an opportunity to reinvest money that didn't look like it was necessarily going to be there in January when he was so out of form. But as the shot map indicates, his form since then, up until the end of the season, has meant that there's a lot of interest in his services in Holland.
The issue I have with this, Joshua, is if this guy, say, for example, someone else was banging in the goals for Utrecht, won the Eredivisie award in April, was breaking 40-year records, and Rangers were interested in him at this point, would be all over this and would be expecting to pay top dollar for him. So Rangers should be seeking top dollar for Sam Lammers if they're happy with him heading out of the door. There's a few comments that are coming in just off the back of it. Roscoe says 8 million for Lammers and no less. I got to say, I agree with him here. I'd be expecting upwards of that. Big Phil gets in touch, always a big fan of the show, says Real Madrid should buy Lammers 50 million. Not quite that far, Big Phil, but I get your point there. Rangers, what should they be seeking, Joshua? I'm not having this just get our money back. I want more than that.
Yeah, well, I'm told they're hopeful of recouping more than that. Again, the background and the context will be that 6 months ago it looked like if you were going to get half the price, if not less, that you paid for Lammers, then that would have been regarded as, okay, you get some money out of what was a failed transfer. I think this just demonstrates that Lammers is clearly, as you say, a really good player in a certain context there. Everyone watched him at Ibrox in the first half of the season, and you could see how much he lacked confidence at different points. One of the other key stats, if you look at his time in Holland compared to Scotland this year, is he's received about half the number of passes. He's only receiving about 14 passes a game. And when he himself says, look, I wasn't effectively used to playing that number 10 role, I never really played as a striker at Rangers. In theory, it should make sense. You know, you watch him and you think he's got the back-to-goal qualities. He can play on either foot. He can score from range, and then he can become an extra attacker in the box. Sometimes it's not just that simple. And again, it reiterates the importance of why you can't have manager-led recruitment that often in modern football. It has to be unique circumstances where that happens, because Lammers was the first player that Beale met as part of his summer rebuild. It was very much a Michael Beale-led signing, a player that he'd been aware of for a long time. Come October, when he was no longer at the club, that role that Lammers had been signed very specifically to play was not there, and clearly Clement didn't try him out as a number 9. He obviously played as a number 10 until Todd Cantwell took that role back. So it wouldn't be a surprise to go and see him score more goals in the Eredivisie. What you would say is it's probably good for Rangers if they can try and drive up a bit of a bidding war. Utrecht are very keen to keep him. It looks like they might just be priced out by another club in their country, again, because of the form that Lammers has shown over the last 6 months.
Yeah, and they've just missed out on Europe as well, which will affect them in terms of who they can go for in the transfer market. Right, let's move on from Lammers. One player, as you touched on, Joshua, who is not coming is Jose Cordoba. We mentioned when I was on with Stevie yesterday morning that Norwich had nipped in ahead of Rangers. It was reported last week that the player preferred to go to Carrow Road as opposed to Ibrox, but an agreement had already been reached between the club and Levski Sofia. But he's now heading to the Canaries. And a lot of people saying, why is he going to Norwich as opposed to Rangers? Quite simply, a number of reasons. One, he wants to play in the Premier League. He can't do that if he's playing in Scotland at Rangers. I get if he could use Rangers as a stepping stone, but Norwich gives him a better platform, better chance of playing in the top league in England. Two, I'd imagine he'll be getting paid handsomely down there, perhaps even more than what he'd be getting at Rangers. Clubs in the Championship are awash with cash, unfortunately, and we're reaching a point when Rangers will be struggling to compete for players with teams in the English Championship, and given the new TV deal down there, it won't be long before teams in League One can offer players the same money that Rangers can offer. So that is unfortunately the world we live in. Don't blame the player, incidentally, for heading down there, Joshua. I get it. It's just a bit disappointing given that Rangers were wooing him, had him over for a game, had him given him the tour and what have you. And he's chosen to go to Norfolk instead. But Rangers, of course, looking at another left-sided defender. It is an area that they're looking to strengthen in. They've been linked yesterday to the Chilean Thomas Galdames. I think that's how you pronounce it. He plays in Argentina for a team that I had never heard of before yesterday. Godoy Cruz, 25-year-old, tipped to make a move to Europe. Rangers interested as well as a club in Belgium as well. So it's certainly an area Rangers looking to bring in reinforcements in.
Yeah, and obviously Hefty is already here. We're going to have some content over the weekend on the website about what to expect from him as a player. Looks like a really exciting player. He actually completed the most dribbles, or attempted the most dribbles of any fullback in the Cyprus top flight last season, Derek. He was attempting almost 5 dribbles per 90, and for context, the highest total Rangers had of players who had played over a certain quota of minutes was Ross McCausland at 2.7 per 90. So he carries the ball an incredible amount for a fullback. And on the members channel and on the website, if you're a subscriber, you can expect a scout report tomorrow on what to expect from Jeffy. Or I think, is it Hefty or Jeff? I'm not sure exactly.
I think it's Hefty. I think it's Hefty, but I'd love to be. As soon as we hear from him, we'll ask him how you pronounce his name.
Yeah, there you go. Cordoba obviously was one that at one stage it looked very likely it was going to happen. You're right, the competition with the English Championship. I mean, this is how Rangers have to kind of position themselves. And they have with a signing like Nico Raskin. If you go back a year, I know he's not had the best individual season. Players want to get to the Premier League. The opportunity Rangers can offer them is you can play for a bigger club than Norwich. You can play in more meaningful games. You can potentially, hopefully, go and play in the latter stages of European competition. But as you say, there's a financial incentive of the Championship. There's the fact that you can earn promotion right away. So there's a direct route into the Premier League instead of being in the shop window with a Premier League club trying to buy you. It's clearly an area that Rangers need to target, the left side of defence and the defence in general. All the noises that came out when Niels Kopping was appointed to the Rangers Football Board was that the recruitment focus is going to change. The type of markets that Rangers are looking into are going to be altered as well. And so has been the case with the players that have come in, Derek, but also the links and the many links that materialise in a transfer window. So expect the interest in centre defenders to continue. Obviously, as ever, it will be dependent on who Rangers can get out the door as well. Everyone's seen the news about Balogun this week. Rangers still have 3 central defenders under contract, and John Souttar, Ben Davies and Connor Goldson at the club at the moment. Obviously, things can change in the transfer window, but you'd imagine some of the incomings, especially in that area, will be dependent on who and if Rangers can get out the door as well.
Yeah, some folks saying, let's see here, Doug says, madness from Cordoba. Norwich just sacked their manager. What if the new man doesn't fancy him? If he's not committed, then he's better off elsewhere. The thing is with that, Norwich have got a director of football in place in a guy called Ben Napper. He's the one conducting transfers. They'll bring in a head coach, as David Wagner was down there, and they just tell him to work with the players that has been brought in. So that's the model that they work with. So it's not necessarily a manager coming in saying, I want this, that, and the other. The director of football has worked down there at Norwich quite well. Incidentally, they did have Stuart Webber for some time. They've now got the guy, Ben Napper, and he is conducting transfer business. So there you go, folks. Galdames, we're trying to get an interview, folks, with someone that has watched Galdames in close detail, so we'll get an idea of what sort of player he is. Again, one of a number of players we expect to be linked with the club over the course of the summer. There will be numerous departures, as we all know. Johnny with the point here says, any idea when we're likely to hear from the club to officially confirm the departures of the out-of-contract players? End of May start, I think end of May is a lot.
Yeah, I would expect to Johnny's point, it to be pretty imminent next couple of days. So keep the Twitter notifications on.
Yeah, the contracts are up. We're on the 31st of May is the official dates that the contracts are up. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And of them all, Joshua, I've seen a few folks saying, Ryan Jack might be getting a new deal. I don't think he will be getting a new deal. I think Leon Balogun will be the only one extending his stay at Ibrox. I've got to say I'm quite comfortable with that. I know that there was a bit of a split opinion when the news was announced earlier on this week that he was extending his stay. But your thoughts on Balogun signing up for another year? I'm quite happy with that, I've got to admit.
Yeah, just in the contracts overall, my understanding that decisions were still being made up until the end of the season, that when the football had finished, and Clement actually confirmed that a couple of times publicly, Derek. Obviously, people will say you should be planning ahead as much as possible, and that's true, and that work has been ongoing. The important thing to remember about this transfer window is Rangers are not starting from a great position, or they've had a manager come in mid-season, they've had a new recruitment head come in mid-season to work with other people's work effectively, and they're having to adapt to that. And I guess do more than one window's work in one window. Balogun, we touched upon it the other day. Over the course, if you look at the fact that he was let go 2 years ago, this is why you do need the director of football. This is why you do need someone ahead of the manager, and this is why managers should not be prioritising. It should not be prioritised first and foremost in recruitment, because recruitment has changed so much. That's why you have specialists in that area. Should managers have to work with players they don't want? No, but I don't think it's as simple as a black and white situation. Otherwise, you end up with the situation Rangers have here, whereby they let Balogun go was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, to allow Leon King to play games. Now Balogun is back at the club, about to sign another 1 year extension, while Leon King can't get a look in really at centre defence, which was the area that Balogun was initially released from to allow those minutes to occur, which King obviously then went and played in the most difficult competition available, the Champions League, but now is behind Balogun in the pecking order. Rangers are going to have to prioritise in this transfer window, because again, you cannot get 20 players out and in a transfer window. It's just not logistically possible. It's not going to happen. So I'm sure there will be decisions that people disagree with, as there always is in the transfer window, and understandably so. We're being really critical of that Balogun situation in isolation, but there's plenty of other decisions we could go on and discuss. You know, over the past month, we've focused on the fact that of the 9 players Rangers signed last summer, only 3 played over 40% of league minutes last season. If you look at the 7 players that arrived in the season before, only 3 of 7 played over 40%. That has been the issue for Rangers. They've not been able to refresh the spine. They're going to have to make some strategic decisions in the lead up to that, which Balogun probably falls under. You can understand as well in a week where the Cordoba deal doesn't happen and Rangers are re-signing a player who is 35, people will start to get a bit frustrated at the narrative of a rebuild until they hear some new names coming in the door.
Yeah, I want to get your thoughts. Some interesting points that are coming in just on the sort of market Rangers are scouring at this moment in time. And Bluebells Are Blue raises a point. He says, any concerns with the amount of South, Central American and African players we've been linked to end up with half the team out at international tournaments every 2 years? And Scott's Wilder with a point as well, just off the back of that. We must be careful. Potential incomings are not eligible for Copa America and African nations tournaments. Cordoba, if he signed, would be away with Panama in the Copa America, which kicks off, I think, around about Euros time. So he'll be back late July. But as an interesting point, Josh, I want to remember with the lads, we've seen it with Abdallah Sima, of course, it cost Rangers when he went away with Senegal, never even played for them in the end, got injured and was out for much of the season. We've got Mohamed Diamande that looks like he's going to be representing the Ivory Coast. And I'm just thinking about the Central American players, Hefty or Jefty. I don't think he will be representing Brazil anytime soon. But going and trying to acquire players from these parts of the world, it's something we need to consider and possibly being out for large spells.
Yeah, it's also balancing out the squad, isn't it? You remember when Liverpool had Mane and Salah both away at the African Cup of Nations at the same time. There's going to be downsides to every single transfer, obviously one of which, as the comments are highlighting, is the time they might be away with international tournaments. But we're speaking about a handful of players. The focus on recruiting in different markets, you see that with Oscar Cortez. I know he came from the French market, but he'd only played a handful of minutes in France before that. Was one of the brightest young players in Colombia. The ownership of the club he moved to in France, Lens, I believe it's pronounced. My pronunciation isn't great today. It was the same as his club in Colombia as well. It was about trying to get him, I believe, into the European market. So as long as there's a handful of players, you're not losing the entirety of your squad. When one of these tournaments comes to pass, I'm sure that won't be too much of a concern. I think the more promising thing is that it's refreshing to see Rangers looking into different markets as opposed to shopping more heavily in the English Championship. And last season, if you look at what happened with the recruitment and you compare that to the comments, again, publicly that were made by John Bennett and co at the AGM, it's clear that Rangers have wanted to shift the recruitment focus, but the proof will ultimately be in where are they at Christmas time? Do they win the League Cup? How do they manage to refresh the spine of the squad? A player like Mohamed Diamandi, I think you can see quite clearly Derek is ready to make an impact now, and I thought the Old Firm game was his best performance in the Old Firm yet. I thought he benefited from playing next to Nico Raskin. He's also someone who should retain a lot of value down the line. That's the sweet spot you're trying to recruit for, but obviously a lot of other clubs like Rangers will be trying to do that as well, so it's sometimes easier said than done.
Yeah, thanks to Rizeeks, he says, I think it is Jeffy with a J. You say the J as in Portuguese, so I'll take your word for it, buddy. So we'll call him Jeffy from now on until he corrects us and tells us otherwise. Dave Fulton with the point just on that left-sided area, Joshua. Says, does this mean Ridvan's days as a Rangers player are up? So Robbie Fraser will be extending his stay, and Jeffy has come in. I expect Jeffy to be coming in looking to play the majority of the games. Where does that leave Ridvan? I expect the usual noise surrounding him this summer. I still expect him to be part of the Turkey squad at the Euros. Whether he plays or not remains to be seen. But we know in the previous transfer window, Galatasaray were very keen on him, but they just couldn't reach an agreement with the Rangers for his services. Do we expect him to be a player next season at Rangers, Joshua?
Yeah, it's an interesting point by Dave because, as you say, Derek, if Robbie Fraser is to stay and he's to sign a contract, he's 21 now, he's not young. You don't foresee him playing B-team football. Rangers B-team hasn't even played that many games over the course of last season. Anyway, so if he was to stay and Jeffy was to come in, I mean, Jeffy played the majority, if not all, of last season. On Transfer Market, it says he's not had any serious injuries, which is a novelty. Coming to Rangers to not have a lengthy injury history behind him. So you expect that he will be here to play games. Is there a possibility they could play in different positions, play higher up? I don't know. He's a very attacking left back, as we'll try and show people in the scout report. The latest that we've heard about the Ridvan situation from his side of things is that there's no plans for him to leave. But as you say, he's a player who holds value, and that was the same in the January transfer window, and he holds interest back in Turkey. Rangers knew that when they signed him, that he was, again, theoretically fit this model of someone who was a young player. He's still only 22, I believe, or 23, and maybe Ridvan is, to be able to sell on down the line. The question surrounding Ridvan and other players, of course, is fitness, is how robust are they? Can they play over the course of the season, or can they only play in 30 games? Because Ridvan's injury had a really detrimental effect on on Rangers' season. If you look back to that Kilmarnock game where Cortez got injured, Ridvan was injured on international duty. You already had Sima out. It was around that time at the start of March. Clement just really didn't have the tools to work with in terms of players in wide positions and at fullback as well. So that's the latest that we've heard. But a transfer window, a lot can change. It's very early in the transfer window. Ridvan, like all other players, will have a price on their head. I don't think anyone disputes. Again, if you contrast it to this time last year, we were still waiting to see what type of player is Ridvan. I think everyone can see that now. Again, sources close to him suggest that working with Clement has really improved him as a player, and that has definitely been the case since the start of the year. Before his injury, I thought he was probably Rangers' most important player and most improved player for the few months before he was injured. But he will have a price because he does have a value, and Rangers will need to be clever in this transfer market to try and raise funds for the business that they do try to do in terms of incomings.
Yeah, a lot of people saying I've got issues with the mic again. It says Derek's mic has turned him into a dribbler again. How's it sounding? I've tried to shuggle my wires, for want of a better phrase there. And does it sound okay, Joshua?
Sounds okay. You need to get a new one, and an expense claim will need to be sorted this afternoon. But hopefully, it'll get us through the last 5 minutes of this podcast.
Yeah, people are saying it sounds better now. So thank you for that, folks. A little bit of jiggling about, and we're back in business. Right, another bit of news you would have seen yesterday. I mean, the strip was revealed earlier on in the week. I love this. Peggy says, I love the away strip, but oh my, laundry, every speck will be seen on it. Yeah, pray for your laundry, Peggy. Pay for the new strip. Jamie Small with the point. Derek, is there anything going on with the new strip? Why Tav wasn't in the picture video? You've seen the Rangers video yesterday of the new strip being unveiled. Ridvan, Dujon Sterling and Ross McCausland are the first team players that are modelling the new shirt. Got to say, it's an absolute belter. Love the fact that the crest is in the blue and red shield that we've seen firstly back in the 97 to the 99 campaigns. Big fan of it, Joshua. It's probably one of Castore's, probably the best strip they've produced for Rangers, I've got to say. But should we read anything into why Tav wasn't part of this? I don't really look too much into that. We know that there is noise around Tav at this moment in time, whether he's a Rangers player or not next season. It remains to be seen, but you'll find often players modelling strips for the next campaign. I think, did Calvin Bassey not model the strip before he departed for Ajax that season? I'm not entirely sure. It's happened before. It will happen again. I'm not reading too much into it. But what do you make of the strip, and what do you make of this point by Jamie?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think it's something that all football fans at all football clubs read a lot into, the players that model the kit, because they're presuming they'll be there next season. Obviously, there's only 3 first-team players, and I'd imagine that there's some optics that goes into this as well. What players are popular in the fans' eyes at a certain time of the season, and obviously when Rangers have lost 2 trophies at the end of the season, that will come into consideration as well. I like the kit. I'm with you. I think it's probably one of Castore's better numbers. Pretty smart, and would imagine, as ever, it'll sell pretty well.
Yeah, and the point here, listen, that's just the price of kits these days. OS19 says 75 quid plus postage for the new kit is insane, by the way. I know back my day, when I was a lad, 40 quid was pricey for a Rangers shirt. But yeah, they're crazy prices. Not just Rangers, incidentally, it's across the board. You'll see prices in the Do Pro shirts now as well, which is over 100 quid, which is quite incredible stuff. But I do feel for parents out there that are buying strips for their kids, and especially since they're getting changed every season. Fair play to, was it, I'm trying to think what team it was it Queen's Park, something like that, that say they're going to keep the home kit for 2 seasons in a row, which is fair play to them. I really appreciate that, and they're doing it because, of course, money is tight for a lot of people these days. And that should be a rule for me. Every club should have their home kit for at least 2 seasons. You can change the away kit as often as you like, but the home kit should stay for a couple of years. But then, as a money maker for a lot of clubs, I understand.
Good luck selling that idea to the sponsors. But I agree with you in principle.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, that'll do us there, folks. Big thanks to Joshua, as ever. Big thanks to everyone for interacting with the show, as always. As we touched on, a lot of transfer news surrounding Rangers. Be sure to keep your eyes peeled on our social media channels and also on the website and YouTube channel for all the latest as it happens, any movement, incomings and outgoings. Yesterday, incidentally, for those of you that are Rangers Review Extra members, I spoke to a guy that played for Ferencvaros back in the day, about a player that has been linked with the Rangers, the right winger, Adama Traore. So it was very interesting to get his thoughts on that. And there's also videos there as well on Yefty. You can read that, or you can watch that when I spoke to Stel about him. So plenty to keep you amused for this time in the close season. We will be back again tomorrow. I will be on with Chris tomorrow morning, so we hope you can join us for that. Unless we speak to you a little later on, or for those of you who just forgot there, we will be recording a a UFT video, Joshua, this afternoon, won't they?
Yeah, probably go out tomorrow on the YouTube, or maybe today in the YouTube members section. We'll see if your mic holds up. But we'll look into, if people aren't subscribers to the website or the YouTube member section, whenever a new player signs, I'm sent off to watch their live scouting games for a day or so, and then come back with some conclusions that are hopefully mildly accurate. So look a bit at what type of player he is, some of the stats, some gifts to put together a bit of an idea of what player he is exactly, what are his strengths, how might he fit into Clement's style of football overall. So a lot of interesting points in relation to what did we decide on Jeffy. I'm seeing contrasting reports in the comments.
Blue Catho's late to the party. He says I'm a bit behind, but I think it's pronounced Yefty. Listen, we need to hear from the man himself. Rangers TV should do a little, I'm sure they will be doing an interview with him. Let us know how you pronounce your name, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, the video about Rangers you signing will be here at some point.
Yeah. Okie dokie, folks. That'll do us there. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.